Take two. So usually I forget to record either my on my camera or on my microphone. This time I forgot to empty my memory card, so halfway through the review it stopped recording. Shame on me, but I'll learn for next time. Guys, it's a learning process. I just watched one of my favorite all-time films, Polyester by John Waters. Now, what is Polyester about? Well, Polyester is about a 1950s traditional housewife who is faced with the challenges of the 1980s as she finds herself going down a downward spiral. I'm going to talk about the plot a little later, but first I needed to talk about this wondrous gimmick. This wondrous gimmick is the gimmick of Odorama. Now, I'm not referring to it as a wondrous gimmick. It's something that's referred to in the film as a wondrous gimmick. That's right, so the opening of this film, you have a German scientist who's explaining Odorama to the audience, and he himself refers to this as a wondrous gimmick.
Hello, moviegoers. I am Dr. Arnold Quackenshaw, and I am here to explain to you the wondrous screen gimmick, Odorama.
What is Odorama? So, just like nowadays, you walk into a cinema, and the cinema clerk is going to give you 3D glasses, and you walk into the theater, you get the 3D glasses, and you put them on your face. Well, this is the same thing, but instead of 3D glasses, they give you this nifty little Odorama card. So, throughout the film, numbers appear in the bottom right corner of the screen. So, say number 1 appears on the screen. You're going to scratch and sniff number 1. You scratch it, you smell it. Number 1 smells a little perfumey, smells a little good. But that's not the case for all of these numbers. I can tell you that. Some of these smell like absolute dog shit. And I keep scratching and sniffing this card and putting it back in the CD case and taking it out and scratching it and putting it back in. And every time I open this motherfucker now, it smells like shit. It really smells bad in here, which is what John Waters was going for. John Waters in an interview was laughing at the whole gimmick of Odorama, saying that he tricked thousands of theater goers to going into a theater and scratch and sniff shit, because one of the cards is pretty close to shit. Now, just like I mentioned, this movie was directed by John Waters, and this isn't the first time I'm reviewing a John Waters film on Garage Movie Reviews. I've reviewed the hit film Pink Flamingos. Story about this DVD. So, I lent this to a friend, and my friend's roommate was getting rid of a bunch of old DVDs, and somehow this DVD landed in the pile that the roommate was going to give away. And luckily, I snatched it just before he could sell it. I got a little lucky because I love this DVD of Pink Flamingos. Now, the whole gimmick of Odorama is very corny. And I think in any other movie, the gimmick of Odorama wouldn't work. Actually, I know that for a fact, because the Odorama gimmick has been tried since this movie. It's been tried in the film Spy Kids 4D, which people saw straight through that. People knew this is just a stupid theater gimmick. 3D is the hip thing. They're trying to do 4D. No one fell for it. But somehow, and I don't know why, it works in a John Waters movie. I can't explain why. I literally have no clue. I think 3D is stupid most of the times. There's some few exceptions where 3D works, obviously, like Avatar. But 4D just sounds like an idea that shouldn't work. But somehow, John Waters pulls it off here, ladies and gentlemen. And I think it's because they really go for it. You know? They don't just tack it on. It really goes for it. You know, one of my favorite movies to watch in 3D, two of my favorite movies actually, are Jackass 3D is a fun time in 3D. I love the shots in Jackass 3D where I think it's Bam Margera has his dick in the bottom of the camera and it kind of looks like a first-person shooter. When you see that scene in 3D, it's even funnier. The other movie I really like in 3D is A Harold and Kumar Christmas. that was presented in 3D. And just like Jackass 3D, they used that opportunity to have characters puking in your face, have characters' dicks flying in your face. And I think these stupid gimmicks lend themselves well to gross out comedy. That's just a personal thing, I guess, but it really works for me. Let's talk about John Waters for a little bit. John Waters is one of my favorite directors. His most notable film, I would say, is Hairspray. But before Hairspray, John Waters would make X-rated movies. And Polyester is actually John Waters' first non-X-rated movie. That's right, this is John Waters' first R-rated movie. All of his previous other films, Desperate Living, Multiple Maniacs, Pink Flamingos, all those movies are X-rated. And I think that's why I like Polyester. Not saying that I'm a coward, I'm a wuss who doesn't like X-rated movies. I do. This just feels a bit more mature. And I think the fact that John Waters had to appeal to a more broad audience, and when I say broad, I use that term loosely because this remains an R-rated movie. But I think the fact that he had to appeal to a broader audience, he had to tailor the movie in a way that he couldn't just rely on the gross out stuff that we see in a Pink Flamingos, which I still love a movie like Pink Flamingos because I'm a sick bastard. But I feel like Polyester and Hairspray, they just have a bit more substance for me. Fun fact, by the way, I just mentioned Jackass and I just mentioned John Waters, and over the last weekend, I was with the family and we decided to watch a nice family movie, so we watched Jackass number 2, and the great John Waters actually makes a cameo in that movie. There's this bit where they want to make Wee Man disappear, and John Waters is a magician, and he makes Wee Man disappear by having an obese prostitute jump on him. Well, I thought that bit was funny, and then Johnny Knoxville in the background was like, "Where'd he go?"
Hi, I'm John Waters, and this is the magic trick. We're gonna make Wee Man disappear.
Oh! Where'd he go?
That was a good bit. I love Jackass, and I love John Waters, so it was right up my alley. Okay, tangents aside, what's going on in this movie? Like I said, Divine here plays your traditional housewife, and all the other family members in this family are going through some weird shit. Let's start with the husband. So the husband owns a porno theater. The movie opens with protesters marching on their front lawn, anti-porn protesters, and Divine just wants to live a quiet family life, but this is interfering with it, obviously.
Down with fuck! Down with smoke!
Not only that, but the husband is also cheating on her with a white girl with cornrows.
See these rings? Guess who bought them for me? If you want, you can look at my clothes. They're the finest of polyester, and I didn't pay for them.
Next, you have the daughter. The daughter is a juvenile delinquent. She's going around partying, drinking alcohol. She's dating a greaser, which is the most over-the-top greaser you can find in a movie. She's addicted to sniffing glue as well, which is actually one of the numbers on this card, is sniffing glue. So you're going around and you're sniffing glue at the same time as these characters. Next, you have the son, and the son is a foot fetishist, and he goes around the town stomping on women's feet, and the cops are trying to find him. Basically, Divine can't catch a break in this movie. This movie is a satire of the different cultures between the 1950s and 60s and the 1970s and 80s. It was a very transitional time in pop culture. You went from the 1950s and 60s, where it was more traditional values, very Leave It to Beaver-esque, very normative, and the 70s and 80s is quite the opposite of that. It's all about sex, drugs, and going against conformity. And the movie plays as a satire, showing the differences between the both of these cultures. And John Waters doesn't really take a stance. He doesn't really say this culture is superior over this culture, like many other counterculture movies. This isn't the case here. He pokes fun at both sides in this movie. He pokes fun at the younger generation, and he pokes fun at the older generation, which is why I like this movie. I like movies that don't take a stance and are able to pull themselves back and find the criticisms in both sides of an issue. John Waters was heavily influenced by this film movement called Women's Pictures, which is this film movement that began in the 1950s and 60s, and it was basically these soap operas where a housewife would find herself in the middle of some situation and fantasizes about escaping from that situation. And in this movie here, Divine's escapism is shown through the character played by Tab Hunter, which Tab Hunter was quite a big actor, big by John Waters standards anyway, to show up in this movie. It was very unexpected, and he does a fantastic job in this movie playing a machismo, handsome hunk. He even sings the opening song of this film, Francine. The movie is just funny to me, okay? And this movie to me is an 8 out of 10, but the fact that it's presented in Odorama and it just goes for that very bold move boosts it up to like a 9 out of 10 for me. I like it when a movie doesn't take itself too seriously, and this is exactly what Polyester is. Some of my favorite bits in this movie, let's run through them, my favorite bits. I love the trick-or-treating scene. There's these trick-or-treaters that show up to Divine's house, but Divine isn't home. The mom is watching the house, and she doesn't have candy, and the trick-or-treaters proceed to destroy the entire house.
Halloween just slipped my mind this year.
That means
The other scene I like is that the delinquent daughter is going around with her boyfriend, and they're driving around and hitting passerbys with a broomstick. They hit a Hasidic Jew with a broomstick, and he just waves his fist and curses at them. Then they hit an old Asian woman, and she does the same thing. But once they get to the black woman, she doesn't take part of that shit. And I remember, I watched, the first time I watched this movie was with the girl I was seeing at the time. And when that scene happened, we died of laughter. Because that girl, she was like a priest or something. That priest didn't take shit from that girl. She hops in a bus, she throws the bus driver out of the bus, she stomps on the gas pedal and zooms and tries to kick the shit out of these juvenile delinquents. Such a perfect scene. It was so funny to watch. I died of laughter the first time I saw that.
You crazy cracker! What's wrong with these children of the day? Don't he know he just hit one of the sisters of the church? I'm sick and tired of what these children are doing. What the police! Police!
Now, is it some lowbrow stereotype? Possibly. But like I said, this movie's poking fun at everyone. So a lowbrow stereotype like that ends up working in a movie like this because regardless of your skin color or your generation, your age, everyone gets poked fun at in this movie, and it kind of works in that way. I love seeing Edith Massey in these movies because I don't know why John Waters found his muse with actors such as Divine and Edith Massey. And I talked about this in my last John Waters film review when I reviewed Pink Flamingos. John Waters is the kind of person who encourages the outcasts of society because he himself, I'm speaking on his behalf, I don't know if he actually felt like this, but he himself was kind of regarded as an outcast of society because John Waters is a very outspoken homosexual person. I compared him to Tim Burton in that review, and that remains true in Polyester. I feel like people like Tim Burton and John Waters, and even a Guillermo del Toro to an extent, they make movies for outcasts. They make movies for the outsiders of society. And the fact that John Waters goes out of his way to cast people like Divine and Edith Massey, just actors you wouldn't see in any other movie besides a John Waters movie, really rings true to how good a director John Waters is. And we see all the time in Hollywood these days, we see people like, why don't they cast more people like this? Why don't they cast more people like this? And John Waters was doing that before it was trendy. John Waters was casting people that weren't your conventional Hollywood beauty way before people started talking about it. So that's why I think John Waters is an interesting director to me. This movie is going to be offensive to most, despite it being one of John Waters' more accessible films. Like I said, it does go for the gross out comedy. It does poke fun at certain things like alcoholism and drug addiction and stuff like that. But like I said, you can tell when a movie is good-spirited, and you can tell when a movie is mean-spirited. This movie is very much good-spirited. It's a kind of movie where people go in the theater and look at each other's differences and just go for a good chuckle. You know, we all get a little laughter at our expense. It's fine. It's all dandy. That's what John Waters does masterfully. I love John Waters. Guys, please stay tuned for part 2. And in the Garage Movie Thoughts component of this review, I'm going to be talking more about the Odorama. I'm going to be playing a little game where I scratch the numbers and try to guess what the smell is supposed to be. It should be a good deal of fun, so stay tuned. Later this week, I'm going to be doing that.
Best to stay new.